All right, boils and ghouls. Finally, I was able to get around to doing this video and rewatching this movie. I was upstate for the last week for Thanksgiving. Hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. Was up there with my daughter and my family, and I always say I'll try to have stuff out, and knowing most of the time nothing's coming out besides maybe some live streams and shorts and stuff like that. But here we are, Exte hair extensions. Japanese horror film. It's not fully a horror film. At least I don't see it that way. There's some stuff in this movie that is absolutely hilarious. And we have, I always forget her name, and I just read it. The actress who plays Go-Go from Kill Bill is the main actress in this movie. Yuriyami or something. It's something similar to that. You know me with Japanese names. But she's the main character here in this movie, and she works at a hair salon. And it's her dream to be a hairstylist and stuff. She's a great character. Then she has this fucked up sister who has a kid, this adorable kid, and the kid ends up getting pawned off onto her from the douchebag sister. She just likes partying and hanging out, and she abuses her daughter. And then we have this guy who works at a morgue, and after the police or something, they find the shipping container at the very beginning of the movie that has hair, just from front to back of the shipping container is just filled with human hair, and they first just think it's hair extensions, and one has to explain to the other one what they are and stuff. But then they see a body that's inside all the hair, and there's this dead corpse that they bring to the morgue, and this hilarious weird ass guy who has, like, he gets off on the hair, like it's almost sexual in a way. It's very strange, but he discovers that this was like a sex trafficked woman who was then murdered. Tragic backstory for her, but her hair keeps growing despite the fact that she is beyond dead. And her hair grows from everywhere, not just her hair. It grows from her eyes, her mouth, every orifice in the body that you could think of. Her hair just keeps growing out. And then he goes around to salons to sell the actual hair of this corpse as hair extensions, and everyone who wears them dies or it goes insane. Like, this movie is so out there, and there are some CGI and some weird effects in this movie that on first watch you'll look at and you'll laugh hysterically, but like, I think that's the point. It has to be. And a lot of Japanese movies are very out there and strange. Look at House from 1979. Tell me that movie's not batshit insane. Same thing here, but a lot of the effects, they, as ridiculous as they do look, and almost cartoonish in a way, and over the top, they still look good. It's still effective. It's funny, and they just pull it off in creative ways. So let's dive into Exte hair extensions, because this is one fun movie. So like I said, opens up with these guys, police, assumably, going to this shipping yard and finding the shipping container. And when I said earlier that it's filled with hair, I mean there is fucking hair. Like, it's like a jungle in there. You can't even see into it. There's just hair draped from the top to the bottom, from the front all the way to the back. If I could find a picture, here it is. And then they see the corpse, and the whole look of the corpse in this movie looks really creepy. Yeah, great images and close-ups of the corpse in the shipping container, because one of the guys backs up against it, and they just think it's hair in there for hair extensions. Like I said, one had to explain what they are to the other. And then they notice a smell, and they think it's human hair stuffed up in here forever. It probably does smell. And this guy backs up against it, and then some of the hair falls, and you just see the gray face of the corpse. And then they're looking, and they're like, don't know what to say. They start saying, there's a person. Like, there's a fucking person there. And the guy turns around and screams hilariously, and he ends up running away. Then you hear this little bell ring, which we see that a few times in this movie, and it kind of reminded me of the autopsy of Jane Doe, which was, 2016, if I recall right? This is 2007. I wonder if that was influenced at all. I mean, I don't know if the guy who directed Jane Doe was a fan of Exte hair extensions, but it reminds me of that a bit. Like the little, what's it called? The little bell they put on the toe of the corpses in morgues, and they use that in Jane Doe. They use that throughout that movie for some creepy scares. Same thing with this. Also, fun fact, if you haven't seen this movie, I'm calling it a Christmas movie because you hear the melody of Silent Night throughout this movie at different points, even though it's like a Japanese version that doesn't have the same lyrics and stuff. It's the same melody as Silent Night. So I'm calling it a Christmas movie, so it fits with this month. So they bring this corpse to the morgue, and Yamazaki, that's the guy. That's my boy right there. This guy is so great throughout this movie. There's scenes where he's like imagining himself flying through the air, like just singing Hair over and over again. I swear I'm not making this up. I might be misremembering that a little bit, but something like that. But he ends up looking at this body and immediately creepy as shit, like touching the body's face, caressing it, saying life's tough, isn't it, talking to it. And then he notices that the hair keeps growing. And he's immediately attracted to this hair. And he ends up taking the corpse home. He ends up stealing this corpse from the morgue. And this movie does have a little bit of meta stuff, because then we have like some really cheerful music and stuff as Yuko, the main character, is riding her bike. And she's talking to the camera, basically. She's breaking the fourth wall, because she's not just saying this to herself for no reason. She's giving a speech about herself in her background. She says her name is Yuko. She's 20 years old. Her dream is to be a hairstylist. So she breaks the fourth wall a bit in this movie, which is fun. And I really like all the performances in this movie, which, tangent, but I was just thinking about this because obviously I'm not Japanese, and it's such a different culture. Now, how do I say this the right way? I'm not saying that they're all the same. That's not what I'm trying to say. I find it, though, harder to judge acting in foreign movies, especially like Asian films and Japanese, Chinese movies. I find it harder to tell if they're really acting well or if they're not acting well, just because it's so different that I have no idea. I mean, that could be how they are over there, that particular person who's acting that way, or they can be acting terribly, and I really wouldn't know the difference. Does anybody know what I'm talking about or can relate? Because if not, let's just move on. But that's the takeaway here, is that all the performances are very good in this movie. But I started thinking that because most Japanese horror films that I really love, and even those that I've watched and didn't like that much, I can't remember a time that I said, like, the acting's terrible in this movie. So then I went off on that whole thing. The cinematography is great in this movie. I think it's a very gorgeous film. And when she's riding through the town, breaking the fourth wall, which does go on for a little long, she's explaining everything about the town, and this is where we ride down this tunnel, and then this is where everyone shops, and she goes on this whole thing. It's fine, but I mean, this whole story doesn't really focus on the town or anything like that. So it goes on a little long, but it's fine because it shows off the town and it is gorgeous. And like I said, the whole movie's just shot very well. And then Yuko gets to her job at the hair salon, and we get to explore that place. That's what I mean. We see more of the hair salon and Yamazaki's house or apartment, wherever he is, and Yuko and her roommate live together. Those are the main locations in this movie. So, again, it doesn't have to do with anything, but you don't see the town, really, except for this whole speech at the beginning about it. Whatever. And another thing I really like about this, the conversations and the dialogue between all the characters is very compelling. It's very interesting. It's fun. Like, I can listen to them just bullshit and banter at this hair salon because they seem like they're having fun talking about any random thing that they're talking about. Like, they did a good job with the dialogue in this movie. So that's right. Before Yamazaki takes the body for himself to sell the hair extensions, all the detectives are in the morgue and they're trying to figure out what the hell happened. They find out, first of all, her hair completely gone. She's shaved bald completely. And they find out that she was a victim of trafficking and illegal organ transplant. They took all her organs out. And then Yamazaki ends up taking the body down the hall and he notices that there's already some hair growing out of her bald head. And then, great shot, how there's hair growing off her tongue out of her mouth too. And then we hear the bell ring, which I mentioned earlier. And it's also really clever that the bike that Yuko rides around throughout this movie, the bell on the bike is the same ring as the bell on the corpse's body. That's clever. That's a cool little addition. Then we actually see the corpse cry, like a tear drip down. And Yamazaki notices this. And again says, like, is it because the world's cruel and it's talking to her? This guy's already checked out probably his entire life ago. This guy's probably been mentally ill for a very long time. But this is the perfect scenario to really send him over the edge. So then Yuko gets home from a hard day's work at the salon and finds her roommate with her sister's kid. Mommy is her name. Sleeping on the couch. And she ends up calling her sister, which, that's right, they're not related by blood. So I guess one was adopted or something. Who knows? Well, it doesn't matter. She calls up her sister, and what a bitch. She's at some club. She pretends that it's her voicemail. You've reached Kiyomi. Leave a message. Beep. And then she knows it's her. And they have this whole little conversation. She says, come pick your kid up. Like, come watch after your kid. I'm not watching this brat. Then mommy hears her say that. And it hurts her feelings a little bit. But this sister, man, like, she's like pressed up against this guy and says that they're not blood related, her and her sister, but she's been like her slave because she's the older one. She's been her slave the entire life. And now this guy says, you're my slave. So she laughs, leans up against him, and he seems like a Japanese pimp or something. Because then there's another woman on the other side of him. Some really older woman. I don't know why that. Point is, terrible sister. And then we find out later, even worse, because of all the abuse. And we see all these just marks and bruises all over mommy's back. It's terrible. So Yamazaki finally gets the corpse home. And like I said, he's probably always been nuts. His neighbors probably know him as the local mental case because you see more hair growing. Not excessive and crazy as it gets, but the hair on her head, strands are starting to grow, again out of the mouth too, and some other parts. So it's growing. And that's exactly what he runs out onto his porch and screams at the top of his lungs. It's growing, and he's so happy. And I'm sure there's people out there that hear him, but nobody pays attention because, like I said, he's probably just the local drunk or lunatic. But he is pretty accomplished with selling these hair extensions. He has awards and shit up on his wall for 2003 best hair, 2004 best hair. So he sees this as a gold mine. Also, the score is great in this movie. Some creepy music box type stuff, typical of a lot of Japanese horror from the late 90s, 2000s, but then creepy strings. Very, very good score. And for those who don't like watching foreign films because of having to read subtitles, which is fine, I know a lot of people like that, I always have to watch foreign films in their natural language with the subtitles. It's just a me thing. But they do have a dubbed version of this. I believe it's on Tubi, both versions. So if you don't like reading subtitles and don't watch a lot of Japanese horror and stuff because of that, but this all still sounds interesting and ridiculous and you'd like to check it out, know that there is a dubbed version. And from what I remember, the dubbing actually isn't that bad. So check it out if you're not big on reading subtitles and that's something that's deterred you from watching some of these movies. And then the bitch sister of Yuko comes to the apartment. Yuko's not home yet. She's just getting off work. And she just makes herself at home. She starts going through her sister's closet, taking her jacket. She pops open a beer from her fridge. Let me say, this woman plays this bitch sister really, really well, I think. No, but she's great. And there's some heartbreaking stuff here. And we have a great argument between the two sisters. And just her saying that it's my kid, I own her. And Yuko arguing back with her and the roommate getting involved. And then threatening to call the cops. And she says, go ahead and call them. You kidnapped my kid. You're not giving him back. But good on them. They don't give mommy back. Fuck that. You're going to give this kid back. You have to see the bruises on the back of this kid's body. And her feet, her legs. She is covered with bruises. It's really sad. And then it's even more heartbreaking because mommy ends up going into the corner, starts crying, and Yuko has to, tell her this is not your fault. Like, none of this is your fault. And she's crying, they're hugging each other. It's very emotional. And then we get some really cool effects where Yamazaki, he has her on a fucking hammock. The corpse is just chilling on a hammock in his apartment. And again, the whole design of her looks great. I don't think they ever say her name or reveal her identity in this movie. She's just the corpse. I'm pretty sure she's credited as just like a corpse. But you see close-up shots that are slowly sped up. And you see the hair growing from like cuts and wounds in her body, growing out of a wound in her leg, and growing out of all different parts of her. Really cool effects work. And he starts, talking and romanticizing to her again like he's been doing, and ends up trimming some of the hair. And then he goes to the hair salon that Yuko works at. And one of her co-workers talks with him. He gives them, they have the bells attached to them, the hair extensions, that's great. And she ends up putting it on, and she's working on a client's hair. Then another cool effect when the extension is like, it's down here, and then the hair kind of comes up and then just goes into her ear. And then she gets to see a vision of what happened to the corpse, the woman, and what led to her death. And it's really disturbing and tragic. Let me say this. The editing in this whole sequence is fucking excellent, man. It is very well done because the hair extension goes into her head, into her ear, and then she starts experiencing everything that happened to her. And it's interspliced with her reactions, and she puts the scissors close to the earlobe of her client, like she's about to cut her earlobe off, like she's becoming possessed in a way by the spirit, or whatever you want to call it, of this woman who was brutally killed. And the way it flashes back and forth, and like the static effect in between the cuts, it's really, really chaotic, and it makes it very disturbing. They shaved her head completely before they killed her. Then, again, as disturbing as all of this is, it's also very cheery because this is a Christmas movie. Because you hear Japanese Silent Night again in the flashbacks, and there's a Christmas tree with Christmas lights on it. So apparently she was killed around Christmas time. So this is a family-friendly Christmas film. But the coworker at the hair salon, she gets taken over completely. And instead of cutting the earlobe off, she starts slowly putting the scissors into her ear. And then she goes a little too deep while in that trance and while being taken over. And the woman freaks out, which, alright, it's a small thing. this whole sequence and flashback that she's experiencing in real time goes on for like 2 minutes or so. The client in those 2 minutes didn't realize something was wrong and turned around and asked, "Are you okay?" just once. I don't know about any of that. But she starts bleeding from the ear, and the coworker starts acting even crazier and starts repeating things that was said to the woman who was killed in the flashbacks. It's a very intense scene, and the editing, again, really adds to that. The tone is so weird in this movie and changes from scene to scene almost. Like, it could be very intense, then it could be just hilarious. Like, if you're not familiar with these type of Japanese movies, it may be very jarring, but it's all great. Like, I love every bit of this. It cuts right after that whole scene to Yamazaki with the corpse, which is now just a full-on hair factory. She has hair coming out of her eyes. There's just hair everywhere around her. And he's sitting there on a stool, strumming an acoustic guitar, singing in Japanese, let it grow today. It's so funny. And then he sees on the news a report that at the hair salon, the employee killed the client and then killed herself. So we don't see that, but we already see the dramatic and terrible effects that these hair extensions have on whoever puts them on. Hilarious that he's rocking her in the hammock, this dead corpse, that you can't even see the corpse much anymore because there's so much hair covering it, and he's saying, "Rock-a-bye, baby." That's what I mean. Just hilarious scene. Then we get a really cute scene where we have mommy who's working on cutting hair, and like she's inspired by Yuko, her aunt. All of that's adorable. Then we cut to the next scene, which is creepy and disturbing. Like, it just keeps changing like that throughout the movie. You'll never see a film like this. Let me say that. If you haven't seen this movie and you're watching this, I urge you to check it out. Because this is that type of film that you'll never see a film like this. You haven't seen one, you'll never see one again. That's how out there and weird this film is, but in like the best ways possible. We get this creepy scene with the Silent Night playing again, and it's just a very, very slow zoom in Yamazaki's apartment, zooming in on the hammock of the corpse with the hair. And then right at the last second, because hair's growing out of one eye, the other eye snaps open and it's just completely white. And then it cuts to the next scene. Really creepy stuff. Then this creepy fucker, Yamazaki, ends up running into mommy, the kid. And she's just walking around town. I guess she was trying to get to the hair salon to see Yuko. And he has a hat on, but on top of a full wig made out of the hair, he looks ridiculous. And he ends up talking to her. He sees one of the bruises, so he says, again, he has something, I guess, for abused women in the world, abusing people and treating them poorly. He says, "Have you been abused?" and introduces himself. Then he ends up bringing her to the hair salon, saying he found her. And then he makes this hilarious comment. He sees Yuko's hair, and he comments on how beautiful it is. But he says, "Your hair, if all the bitches in the world," and they give him a look, and he goes, "I mean women." And hair like yours. Then he just turns around and runs away. Again, the comedy's great in this. So then Yamazaki ends up going to the salon with a bunch of the hair extensions and gives it to a lot, it seems, of the employees there. I don't think all of them put them on, and that's why we don't see them all die. I guess I just answered my own question and thought that I had. But one of them does put them on. And she ends up going home, and she's in the bathroom. And the effects look really good here, and they make me squirm a bit. She ends up seeing a strand, just a single strand of hair coming out of her eyeball. And then she starts pulling on it. and continuing to pull on it and pull on it. Kind of like a magician or a clown, like when they pull the multicolored flags out of their mouth and it keeps on coming. That's how exactly that looks. And it really is effective. And then she notices a cut on her hand and hair. She starts pulling that out in just infinite amounts. Then her tongue is covered in hair. Then you hear the ring of that bell again. And then she gets into the living room. Just some of these effects, man, they are ridiculous, but they really do look good. And it seems that her hair, the corpse, seems to grow at an accelerated rate every time one of the people that wear the extensions is killed or being taken over, because we see this effect, which it's all right. He's in the apartment and the corpse, the hair just starts growing and just coming and filling the room up. And then we see the employee who was just pulling out the strands and everything. This is probably the most famous, I don't know if you can say famous, but most well-known shot of this movie, and it's on the poster art. Her hair just goes and connects to like the ceiling. It looks like a whole bunch of spikes. The hair, like it just spreads out in every direction, then it lifts her all the way up to the ceiling, then drops her back down, and now she has no hair. She's bald, just like the corpse was before she was a corpse, when she got killed. She starts having these weird effects on her face, and then the hair just comes pouring out of both of her eye sockets, out of her mouth, and spreads and fills the entire room up. It looks ridiculous, but it is creepy in a way. Like this movie really toes that line of horror, creepiness, and comedy in a really, really unique way. So then Mommy ends up getting, well, I guess not kidnapped, it's her mom, but her mom comes over when Yuko and Yuki is her roommate's name, aren't home, and ends up bringing her back to, I guess it is her boyfriend, the Japanese pimp, hanging out with her and the older Japanese woman from earlier. I guess it's her boyfriend, and they ended up, like always, every time this bitch sister has come to Yuko's place, take stuff of her, so they take some of the hair extensions. And really cool how a lot of this is shot. I don't even know how to describe what happens to these people, but both the sister and the boyfriend basically end up exploding into hair while Mommy is locked in a closet. But the lighting is very good in this scene, because the hair, like when they exploded the hair, it's sharp, I guess, and part of it makes a tear in the closet door. Then you just see a bunch of flashing light that comes through, and you see a lot of it focusing on Mommy in the closet. All of that's really, really done well. And then again, I don't know exactly what happens here, but it's tense. Mommy is walking around the apartment after getting out of that closet, and she doesn't see the bodies or anything of her mom or the boyfriend, but then she sees a bunch of hair coming out of a door from down the hall, and it's all darkly lit. It's very atmospheric. And then the hair starts, I don't know, it starts growing rapid fire, and then explodes against the glass of the apartment right when Mommy's able to get outside the place in time, and she has to like jump off a little ledge, so she narrowly escapes death. So Yuko ends up at the hospital to check on Mommy. She's fine, minor injury, but then the detectives are there, and they bring her down to identify her sister's body. She says, "Yes, it's my sister," and starts crying. I don't know. Yeah, it's her sister, but she was a bitch the entire movie, and I'm sure for their entire lives, but still sucks. So now Mommy doesn't have a mom, and Mommy's in the hospital bed, and Yuko goes over and says, "What happened?" And it sounds ridiculous because of exactly, that's the truth. This is what happens in this movie. That's exactly what happened. But coming out of her mouth, it sounds ridiculous. She says, a monster. She says, a monster. She says, yeah, a hair monster killed my mom. I don't know, it's just funny when she says it out loud. Then the detectives start to think that there's a connection between all these deaths and the missing corpse and her hair and everything that they found in the shipping container. So they're starting to put things together, and so is Yuko. She's starting to put it together too. See, I'm telling you, it wasn't a fantasy like I was remembering or trying to earlier. It's actually happening in real life. It cuts to his apartment, Yamazaki, and there's music playing, and he's dancing around and singing, hair, my hair, my hair, and he's rolling around on the ground in the hair. He has strands of it, and he's dancing like this. I swear to you, I'm not making this up. It is so funny. But it's one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen in a movie. And yeah, they did a fantastic job with the dynamic between Yuko and Mommy. Like, it's so adorable. And the way that they bond. And then you see her, because now she has no mom, she's living with her. And they just hang out and talk. And she asks, how did you know that you wanted to have a career, cutting hair? And she tells her whole backstory on that. And she's reading a, story to her in bed and teaching her how to cut hair with the scissors. All of that's done very well. Like, it really makes you care about these people. She uses Mommy as, like, her model for this workshop at her salon, but she ends up putting one of the hair extensions on her. Then the detectives show up and shut down the workshop, and they start trying to ask questions and figure out where they got the hair extensions from. And they ask, is it Yamazaki? Was that the guy's name? And then she's putting it all together in her head, and she ends up racing home to try to save Mommy, because she ended up leaving and going back home when the detectives were doing their whole questioning and stuff of the people at the salon. So she ends up racing home, and there is hair everywhere. She's cutting hair, and the roommate's there with her. And Yuko is on her bike racing there. And when she gets there, she opens the door to the apartment. It's just a sheet of hair. And then she has to wade through the hair. Like, claustrophobic, so tight together. It's just, you would think that you're just in a furry black room. That's what this place looks like. And she finds both Mommy, like, unconscious. She was choked out by the hair. And I don't know if the roommate's dead. I don't remember. I mean, she's all strung up and by the hair too. Think of the tree rape scene from the Evil Dead movies. Except if it was hair and she didn't get raped. It was just her being strung up. So I don't know if she's dead. I forget if we see her again. She looks pretty dead. But then we have Yamazaki show up again in his ridiculous wig with the hat on it, and he yells at the hair and says, stop it, like, stop, trying to kill these girls, meaning Mommy and Yuko. And he ends up taking the two of them in his car, and then he starts singing again while driving his car with two kidnappees in the back, with hair grown all over his car for some reason, or he draped it there, I guess, singing hair, my hair, while he's driving. And then he's talking about how he was always alone, and the hair makes him feel comfortable, and we can be together forever, bound by the hair. Movie's batshit insane. And then we get the climax of this movie. Yamazaki arrives back at his apartment with Mommy and Yuko, and he finds the two detectives that put together, that he took the body. They're all stuck to the wall, entangled in hair, again, just like the last place. Hair over here, hair over there, hair fucking everywhere. And he ends up just completely snapping, like worse than he ever has been so far. He kills the detectives, first of all, because they're still alive when he first finds them. And then he starts saying to Yuko and Mommy to live with him and the hair forever. And that they're so special to him and all of this weird, crazy shit. And she ends up taking a piece of glass and slicing the side of his neck. And in like Sam Raimi excessive fashion, except not with blood, hair just starts shooting out of the wound. Man, it's so fun. Then we get a creepy ass shot where it's focused on him, Yamazaki, and the corpse sits up in the hammock right behind him. And just the way it looks with the big ass hair strand coming out of her eyeball and coming out of her mouth. And she pretty much tries to prevent him from hurting Yuko and Mommy. All the names in this movie, man, my head is fucking spinning. And she ends up, I don't know, possessing him, but this all looks great and ridiculous at the same time. The hair comes out of both his eyes. His tongue is stretched like 2 feet out of his mouth. And he's not dead. He still starts going after them. Then the corpse controlling the hair makes like strands of hair in the doorway. So he runs towards it and it chops him into pieces. And then you just see his shoes and then his head fall on top of it, and then the hat fall on top of it. And then it starts walking for like a good 7 to 8, 10 seconds until it just stops. He's dead for good. And then the corpse lays back down. Creepy, over the top, something you'll never see again. With him dead and her grudge. I mean, this is a great movie about abuse. Like, that's the core theme of this film. Everything that the corpse, the woman, went through before, being murdered and having her organs, eyes taken out and stuff, and then just brutally killed. All the abuse that she went through, and her hair extensions, being her vengeance on the world for what happened to her. And then you have the whole subplot of Mommy, who's been severely abused by her mother. So, and then she reaches a resolution at the end too. After all the hair on the corpse instantly comes flooding back into her body. It looks alright. But then as it gets closer and it's going back into cuts in her body and stuff, that looks pretty good. And then we have just an adorable ending. This movie has a lot of heart, where Yuko and Mommy are like on a beach and they're hanging out, and she says like, "Be with me forever" to Mommy. Basically, come live with me, you're my sister. Which they call each other sis, even though it is her niece, right? I mean, it's her sister's kid. Whatever. So, stay with me forever, sis. And then it just ends with some poppy Japanese music. Exte, hair extensions. If you sat through all this, you haven't seen it yet, you gotta see it. Because even with the pics I threw in and stuff, you have to see the effects work in this movie. As over the top as it is, throughout most of it, a lot of it still looks really, really good. Especially the fact that it fits the tone of this movie, which, like I said, is all over the place, but in the best way possible. This is just such a fun movie. I can't say it's an excellent film, but for me, it's an excellent film. It has everything in here. It has a lot of heart. It has great performances, great characters that you really care about. The whole abuse theme that plays through it is pulled off extremely well. There's a lot of creepy shots in here. There's stuff that's absolutely hysterical in every way. I mean, the effects too. I mean, the score, the cinematography. There's not much negative I could say about this movie. This is just one movie that people are going to love it, or they're going to think it is so stupid they can't get into it. But fortunately, I'm in the prior category. But that's Hair Extensions from 2007. A blast of a watch. Alright, guys. So we have Damien Maffei coming on Thursday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And like I said, I'm pissed about the friggin' power loss earlier and having to reschedule with Jim Wynorski. But hopefully sometime in the next week and a half or so. We'll have that set up. So lots of fun stuff to look forward to. I'm thinking of doing Ju-on the Grudge, the original. That'll probably be the next deep dive video. Hopefully tomorrow, but I hate saying that because you know how that shit turns out. Alright, everybody. Hope everyone has a great morning, afternoon, or night, and I will talk to you soon. Take care, guys.